The poet William Winthy reminds us that we put on our stories before our clothes every morning. And you've learned a lot today as our speakers have, with great vulnerability, exposed those stories to you and to us. But how do you put on a story when you're still not quite sure how to tell it? For most of my life, I've wanted to die. When I was young, I would lay out on the driveway and look up at this vast expanse of stars, and I would imagine my eventual funeral. Usually it came with a newspaper headline that said, young artist, young rock star, young martyr, Timothy Palmer, dead at a young age, potential not fully realized, the world should mourn, right? And I would think about the women that would gather around my coffin and weep at this unmet potential that I had. But as I grew up, those fantastical ideas about what death would look like for me began to take a darker turn and shift into darker visions. I would find myself at the train tracks with my car and visualizing myself walking on the track as the train came toward me. Also, while I was in the car, sometimes I would have to fight the urge to swerve into oncoming traffic. Suicidal ideation has been a part of my life for as long as I can remember. And even though I was diagnosed with clinical depression in 8th grade and was on medication and had therapy and things like that, these thoughts never really went away. But I didn't develop a plan for how I would end my life until I was 38 years old. And at the invitation of my community of support, as well as my doctor and my family, I was, for the first time in my life, taken to a psychiatric facility and hospitalized because my depression had gotten so bad that I couldn't do anything and I couldn't see any light in my life. For the first 24 hours or so of that hospitalization, I didn't do anything except for sleep. My body, as we heard from Katie, was letting me know that it was tired. And so I just slept. But the first night that I went to dinner, I was walking in line, and there were some newbies like me, but there were also some OGs that had been in the different systems and hospitals that were with us. And one of them I call Fur Hat and Fedora Guy because that's how he showed up to the facility, in a fur coat and a fedora. Well, he, when we were in line, invited me to come and sit with him and some of the other OGs, and I declined, not only because I felt like I was better than him, I'm embarrassed to say, but also because I was just so tired of interacting with other human beings. I just felt like I needed my own space. So I went through the line and I got my meat and gravy on my tray, and I got a fork and I sat down with my tray at a table by myself, and I began to try to figure out how I would eat the meal in front of me because it needed a knife, but I was in a psychiatric facility for suicidal ideation, and for whatever reason, they didn't want to give us knives, all right? And so I'm sitting there, and I'm trying to figure out how to eat this meat, and I hear, psst, hey. And I look over, and it's Fur Hat and Fedora Guy, and he's saying, turn it around. And I'm confused because I don't know what he's talking about, and I'm still trying to eat my meal, and he says, yo, turn it around. And he holds his fork up and holds the tines of his fork with the handle of it face down. He was inviting me to see this world and these tools with a new perspective. And every meal from then on, I got one fork and one knife fork to eat my meals. I was in there for about 12 to 13 days, and I can remember the next day we were going to dinner, and I realized that there was a vending machine on the way to dinner. And I'm a candy junkie. I love it. And I especially love Reese's peanut butter cups. And in this vending machine were Reese's peanut butter cups. And I thought to myself, what a cruel jest, right? You put us in here, we're dealing with the most difficult things in life, and here you're gonna put Reese's peanut butter cups and we're not allowed to have money? Like, what is happening here? And I was complaining to some of my friends that I had begun to sit with at dinner, and I told them this, and they were like, you can have money, bro. And I was like, this is my first time. I don't know what I'm doing, all right? And so I called my wife that night and I said, hey, is there any way that you can get me some money, put it on my books? I don't know how they do it, but can you figure out a way to get me some money so that I can get these Reese's peanut butter cups? My life had gone down the toilet. I was not feeling good, but I knew that Reese's peanut butter cups were like this crack of light in the darkness that I was experiencing. And so with the help of a friend, I showed up to my room one day, and there was a brown paper bag, and I opened it up, and there were 16 crisp $1 bills. So I shoved it in my pocket. I began to walk to dinner that night, and I veer off from the line of people that are going in to eat in the cafeteria, and I put $1 in, I put $2 in, I push A5 or B4 or whatever it was, and the little spinny thing starts to spin, and the Reese's peanut butter cups begin to move toward me, and there was this light, and angels began to sing, and it was like this amazing. And as it began to fall, that little thing caught it, and it didn't get stuck. It fell down into the deal. I put my hand in there, I held onto it, and after dinner that night, I went back to my room. And I want to remind you that I was still chronically suicidal at this point in my journey. And I sat on my bed, and I looked at those Reese's peanut butter cups. And as I did, I recalled how the friend that brought me the money had been there for me for years. I began to recall that I had just gotten off the phone with a wife who spent the time to figure out a way for me to get these Reese's peanut butter cups. And I opened them and I ate them so slowly because every bite was a communion. A connection to a community of people that knew me and knew what I needed at that time. But I still, for whatever reason, was just not able to figure out how to want to live. And so a couple of days later, I'm sitting on that same bed, and I can think of a million reasons why my death would not be a good thing for my family, for my students, for people in the community. But there was nothing that I could think of that just made me want to live, something for me. And so I remembered a conversation that I'd had with my wife a few days earlier. She called to inform me that our youngest son had a new dream and that he wanted to get his hair cut into a mullet. Y'all know the party in the back, business in the front, party in the back, like the neck warmer thing, or what did they say, the Mississippi mud flap? I can't remember what all it is, but he wanted to get his hair cut into a mullet, and something clicked for me. And I said to myself that I want to live because I want to see my son's mullet. And even if I don't live a day past that, I am going to live to see his mullet. And thankfully, after 10 or 12 days in the hospital, my family came to pick me up, and I saw that beautiful mullet. But that hospitalization wasn't the end of my journey. After that, I still made another plan to end my life. I still went to the hospital 3 times, so 4 times in as many months. I had 25 sessions of electroconvulsive therapy. I had a number of medication changes and a handful of new diagnoses. And those coalesce to create the most difficult year that we've ever experienced. And even now, I have to eat properly in order to be mentally healthy. I have to sleep. There's no more staying up until 2 a.m. on creative projects. I have to go to bed by 10 o'clock, and I can't wake up too early. My sleep routine has to be in check for me to be mentally healthy. I can't do as much as I used to be able to do. My bandwidth has shrunk to a proportion that I never thought it would. My grandiose, delusions of grandeur about becoming a rock star or a martyr or whatever it was, having my face on Rolling Stone, those don't exist anymore because my world has had to become so small. And still, there are days when I don't want to live. And in those moments, I start working through my safety plan. It's kind of a turn it around discipline that reminds me to look at my life from a different perspective. And in those moments, I remember that Reese's peanut butter cups can be transfigured into communion cups, connecting me with a community of people that love me and that I love. And in those moments, I think about how my wife laughs on the inside when I tell her a joke. I remember that my daughter sings Taylor Swift songs while she's doing the dishes. I recall the number of conversations that my son and I have in the car on the way to school in the morning. And of course, I visualize the beautiful, luscious locks of hair that trail my youngest son when he rounds first base. And in those moments, if even for just a moment, I want to live. Thank you.